Covering over 6.5 million square miles, South America is the fourth largest continent on Earth. Remarkably, it also ranks fifth in terms of population, with over 443 million inhabitants that account for approximately 6% of the global population. Aside from its vast area and large population, South America is a top destination for tourists seeking outdoor adventures. However, over the years there have been numerous reports of tourists vanishing under mysterious circumstances, sometimes linked to armed violence or regional conflicts. In this video, we will explore 5 stories of American tourists who went missing in South America. By the age of 29, Boris Weisfeiler had already earned a PhD and had achieved the rank of professor at the University of Pennsylvania in his late 30s. But he wasn't just about the books. He loved the outdoors and often embarked on solo hiking expeditions. In December 1984, Boris decided he needed a break from his academic work and the Pennsylvania snow. Speaking with his sister, Olga Weisfeiler, he mentioned his plans to head south to enjoy the summer weather. He eventually chose Chile as his destination, and on September 25th he arrived in the country for a 10-day solo hiking trip along the mountains near the border between Chile and Argentina. At the end of his trip, Boris was expected to take a bus from the small southern town of San Fabian to Santiago, and then fly back to the United States to resume teaching at Pennsylvania State University. However, he never arrived at the location as anticipated. Concerned by his prolonged absence, his family reported him missing through the embassy, prompting a police inquiry into his disappearance. Several weeks later, Boris's backpack was found near the Nubel River. His passport, return ticket, undisclosed cash, and some other personal items were missing from the backpack. A further search of the river with the aid of Chilean Navy frogmen turned up nothing. On March 6th, the inquest into his death was closed, with the Chilean courts ruling that Boris might have died by accidental drowning. Boris's family never accepted the official finding. They continued to look for an explanation for Boris's disappearance, spearheaded by the efforts of Boris's sister Olga. After a few years, Olga finally discovered something sinister about her brother's disappearance. A Department of State official informed her that a commission set up by the new Chilean government had listed her brother's case as an unresolved case of human rights abuse. Upon getting this information, Olga then pushed for more answers, now even more convinced that her brother did not die from drowning. However, she only received curt replies that she was dissatisfied with. In the year 2000, the U.S. declassified several documents that finally showed that they knew more about Boris's disappearance than they had earlier disclosed to Olga. One eyewitness account particularly struck Olga among the various scenarios it contained about Boris's fate. The witness described how Boris was washing something in the Nubel River when a police patrol, acting on a tip about a foreigner in the area, intercepted him. Without the required permit to be in the area, Boris was arrested and taken to a German enclave known as Colonia Dignidad, led by former Nazi Paul Schaefer. At Colonia Dignidad, Boris's calm demeanor made his captors suspect he was a spy accustomed to handling difficult situations. They tortured him and kept him in animal-like conditions. The same eyewitness later appeared on a radio show, revealing that after months of savage interrogation, Boris was executed with a shot to the nape of his neck. At this point, it was clear that Boris was dead, brutally murdered simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The eyewitness reports later prompted a more detailed investigation by the Chilean and U.S. governments into Boris's case. This investigation unearthed that all members of the Army patrol that captured Boris were transferred to other posts in the wake of earlier inquiries into Boris's disappearance. It also revealed that all the carabineros involved in the original search party were relocated across the country, and the leading officer in the search retired from service, seemingly to perpetuate a cover-up. On August 21, 2012, a Chilean judge ordered the arrest of 8 former police and military officials suspected of involvement in his disappearance. They faced charges of aggravated kidnapping and complicity in the crime. However, the eventual ruling did not go as Boris's family had hoped. The judge reclassified the case as a common crime, subject to a time limit for prosecution. This distinction, unlike a human rights violation, allowed the statute of limitations to expire and meant that all 8 suspects were ultimately free. It also effectively ended any possibility of holding those responsible accountable for Boris's disappearance. In 2017, 22-year-old Jesse Clint Galganov graduated from Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, USA, with a 4.0 out of 4.0. He had plans to attend medical school, but decided to defer them in favor of going on an 8-month travel adventure through South America and Asia. His journey began on September 24th with a flight from Montreal to Lima, Peru. He soaked up the city for a few days at the Loki Hostel before embarking on an 8-hour overnight bus ride to Huaraz, arriving on September 28th. After settling into a backpacker hostel, Jesse spent the day preparing for a 4-day trek on the Santa Cruz Trail. He also told his mom about the trek, mentioning he might be out of contact until his return. The next day, Jesse started his trail as he had planned. A day later, he reached the Tolipampa camp late and shared his campsite with a pair of French hikers. These new companions would later claim they had found Jesse's behavior concerning. He reportedly mentioned getting lost or disoriented on the trail and complained of headaches and diarrhea. However, the following morning they found him in better spirits. Together, they had breakfast before Jesse continued on his trail. The next confirmed sighting of Jesse was during the afternoon of October 1st. He was said to have met up with a Czech hiking group near Punta Union Pass and asked them for water. After his interaction with them, Jesse set off on his own again, never to be seen again. Initially, Jesse's mom wasn't fazed when her son didn't reach out after his 4-day hike. She figured he might have chosen a longer trail and would contact her when he arrived. But with each passing day of not hearing from her son, worry began to gnaw at her. In a moment of desperation, she reached out to his friends on Facebook. Only one responded positively, revealing they'd been in contact with Jesse until September 29th. With each passing day bringing no further news, Jesse's mother filed a missing persons report on October 14th. In her search for answers, she also contacted embassies from Peru, the United States, and Canada for any help they could offer. The investigation into his disappearance was hindered by several factors. First, the owner of the hostel where Jesse had stayed denied that he had ever arrived. Additionally, muleteers who worked the trails often refused to speak to authorities, fearing they would be held responsible if he were found. Nevertheless, the investigation persisted, but ultimately proved futile as neither Jesse nor any of his gear was found. At this point, Jesse's parents decided to take matters into their own hands. They flew to Peru to walk the trail where their son was last seen and hired a private Israeli search and rescue company to aid in the search. They shockingly spent more than $1 million throughout the process, raised through an outpouring of community support via charitable donations and a GoFundMe page. Beyond searching for their son, Jesse's parents also offered rewards for any information that could lead to his discovery. First, they put out an offer of $10,000, then increased it to $30,000, and finally a whopping $500,000. Theories also swirled about Jesse's disappearance. His parents believed that their son may have been kidnapped for forced labor purposes by a cartel, which was the reason why they offered up the reward money. Another possibility was that Jesse had suffered acute altitude sickness during the hike, tried to find shelter, and then fell into a crevice. However, neither scenario has been confirmed by the authorities. In honor of Jesse, his father launched JesseProtected.com, a website dedicated to the prevention of disappearances, awareness, and support for people with missing loved ones. On Saturday, January 28th at around 1 p.m., Raul Jimenez went hiking with his two friends at the Parque Nacional da Chapada dos Veadeiros, a national park in Brazil. It was part of their plans for their vacation trip in the country, having traveled down from Florida several days earlier. However, as the trio's hike went on, the waterfall within the park suddenly picked up strength out of the blue. At the time, Raul and his friends were walking through the rocks when the water level increased. Within moments, it became a flash flood that rose to their shoulder height and subsequently swept them away downstream. Initially, all three seemed to survive the ordeal as they grabbed onto nearby rocks for safety. However, Raul noticed that his bag was floating away and decided to try to get it back. In the process, the water came crashing down some more and took him further downstream. Meanwhile, Raul's friends continued holding on to the rocks until rescuers arrived nearly 6 hours after the flash flood. Once the search and rescue team was informed of what happened to Raul, they began searching for him after everyone else was brought to safety. His sister and parents flew in from their home in Florida, while his friends back home held a vigil for him. As hours passed, the search intensified, but did not turn up anything. By the next day, it had become a national rescue mission that included firefighters, search dogs, drones, and air support. On day 4, after Raul first went missing, His body was found about a mile away from the Raizama waterfall, where he was hiking. It was then taken to the morgue, where he was officially declared dead. After news of his death was confirmed, some individuals who were associated with him shared touching tributes on social media. One in particular came from Ananda Lee, along with a photo of her and her husband with Jimenez at their 2020 wedding. "Thank you for shining your light into this world, sharing your magic and your medicine wherever you went," Ananda Lee wrote on her Instagram page. "Your smile lit up the room. With the sweetest hugs and loving soul. You will forever be in our hearts, dear brother. I am lucky to have many special memories together, playing, praying, singing, being silly, loving life." Raul was eventually transported back home and buried by his family. To support his family, a GoFundMe campaign was also created, gathering over $33,000 out of its $250,000 goal. In January 2024, Dakarai Earl Cobb had been staying in a room in the Santa Lucia neighborhood, located in the west of Medellin, Colombia. The room was part of a larger building owned by a local family who also resided there. According to the owners, they had rented the room to him as a favor, since he had approached them with an urgent need for temporary accommodation. They agreed to let him stay for just 1 month, during which Dakarai was expected to find more permanent housing. The owners also noted that he mostly kept to himself, and they hardly saw him except for the occasional greeting in passing. At the beginning of February, the owners checked on him to remind him that his stay had elapsed. However, when they knocked, no one opened the door for them. They returned 2 days later, on February 5th, out of concern that he had been missing for some days. But upon entering the room with their own keys, they found Dakarai dead on his bed. It appeared that he had been deceased for quite a while, although they were unsure of when exactly it happened. The discovery left the owners in distress, and they quickly contacted local authorities about the situation. Local authorities arrived promptly and transported Dakarai's body to legal medicine for forensic work to establish the cause of his death. An investigation was then launched into the incident, initially leading to speculation that it might have been a case of theft gone wrong. However, subsequent interviews with the tenants in the building provided insights that theft was not involved. As the investigation into Dakarai's death continued, it was uncovered that his demise was one of 4 to occur within Medellin within 4 days of his discovery. 3 other people were found in similarly suspicious circumstances. 2 of the individuals were reported to have fallen from the floors of their rooms under mysterious conditions, while the 3rd was found dead in a hotel room without any signs of violence or struggle. These deaths, happening in such close succession, prompted a deeper investigation to determine if there was any connection between them or if they were part of a larger, more sinister pattern. While the investigations were ongoing, tourism in the area declined as people became increasingly worried about their safety. To quell these fears and reassure both residents and visitors, Medellín's Safety Secretary, Manuel Villamejia, announced a plan of action aimed at tackling issues such as sexual exploitation, human trafficking, micro-trafficking, and theft, which he suspected might have played a part in the recent deaths. He also issued a stern warning to tourists. "We will inform tourists about the type of tourism we want to nurture and impose strict measures against those who threaten safety. We invite tourists to enjoy our gastronomy and business opportunities, but repudiate commercial sexual exploitation. Foreigners involved in criminal activities will be confronted as we focus on promoting responsible tourism in the city." Ultimately, no suspects were arrested in relation to Dakarai's death, leaving the circumstances surrounding his demise shrouded in mystery to this date. On November 18, 2022, Thomas Karstens Jr. arrived in Guyana, South America for a much-awaited 7-day fishing trip. Along with other foreign nationals, he proceeded via private chartered aircraft to Apoteri village in North Rupununi, where the expedition was set to begin. Within the first few days, Thomas experienced incredible success, catching a 100-plus pound jow catfish, which he had always craved. In addition to this impressive catch, he reeled in a red-tail catfish and many other Amazonian fish. Towards the end of the fishing expedition, Thomas decided to try his luck elsewhere. He and another traveler hired a small-sized boat and headed upstream in the Essequibo River, searching for spots where they could make more great catches. Nearly 2 hours into their journey upstream, they encountered a fast-flowing and turbulent part of the river. While the ship captain was trying to navigate the challenging waters, their 15-horsepower outboard engine suddenly experienced a mechanical malfunction and switched off. This unexpected failure left them at the mercy of the rapids, causing the boat to drift uncontrollably downstream. At the same time, water began to flood the boat due to its small size. This situation caused Thomas to panic, and he impulsively jumped into the water, clinging to the side of the boat in an attempt to stabilize it or simply out of sheer desperation. However, when he tried to get back into the boat, his body weight caused more water to flood in, further destabilizing the vessel. It was at this critical point that the boat captain and the other traveler realized they had no choice but to abandon the vessel. They promptly jumped into the river and began swimming towards a small island roughly 7 meters away from where they had entered the water. They expected Thomas to do the same, but for reasons unknown, he did not. Within moments, the boat took on more water and sank, causing Thomas to go underwater. Sadly, he did not resurface, most likely due to the intensity of the river currents. Thomas and the other members of his fishing party were expected to return to the resort where they were lodged later that evening. However, when they did not return or make contact via any other means, a search party was sent out to look for them. The search party subsequently located the 2 surviving men on the island and assisted them in returning to the resort. During this time, the survivors informed the search party about what happened to Thomas. The next day, another search party was dispatched to the location where the 2 surviving men claimed the tragic incident occurred. After an extensive search, Thomas's body was discovered approximately 5 kilometers away from the incident area, already in an early stage of decomposition. His body was carefully recovered and examined for any signs of violence, but none were found. Subsequently, Thomas was taken to a nearby health center, where he was officially declared deceased before being transported to the regional mortuary. He was then buried in Georgetown, Guyana at a local cemetery. It was later discovered by the authorities that the tour Thomas had registered for the fishing expedition was not approved by the Guyana Tourism Authority. This discovery prompted the Minister of Tourism to issue a statement advising tourists to verify that their tours and tour operators are officially approved by the Guyana Tourism Authority. The statement also emphasized that unapproved tours may lack essential safety systems and protocols, potentially compromising the safety and well-being of participants.